welcome to episode 7 of Coffee with Keith. My name is Amy Gruber and I'm Director of Enrollment Management at TASIS Portugal. Hard to believe that this is evening 7 for us with these weekly events, and it's been so wonderful to hear from our founding families, from people who are just considering TASIS Portugal, and our faculty who attend and are getting to know each other via these live events. So it's my pleasure to introduce you to Keith, famous for Coffee with Keith, and I'll thank our producer / Director of Studies, Andrea Balaz, to turn it over to Keith. Thank you.
Good evening. Welcome, everyone. You know, 7 has always been one of my favorite numbers. My early hockey hero, a man named Phil Esposito from my hometown, was the captain of the Canadian hockey team in the Canada-Russia Summit Series in 1972. He captained that team to victory, and he's been one of my heroes ever since. Incidentally, when we were young and in school, so in 1972, I was in grade 3. In fact, it was my 3rd time in grade 3, I believe. My mother was the teacher. We used to watch the television program, the World Championships or the Summit Series, as an entire class. In fact, everybody in our country watched all 8 games of the Canada-Russia Summit Series. It was amazing. It's also the reason that Canadians, my era, don't know how to read. So number 7 is an important number to me, but number 1 is actually an even better number, because really, if you're going to do something, why not be number 1? And that's what we're here to do in Portugal. We want to be number 1. Of course, we want to be respectful, we want to be kind, we want to be ethical, but we're not going to lose focus of our goal. As Winston Churchill once said, my tastes are simple. I'm easily satisfied by the best. So in the spirit of number 1, I want to single some folks out tonight who had incredible faith in us. These people met Amy and myself in the lobby of the Cascais Sheraton Hotel more than 6 months ago. That was before we had an admissions office, before we had a brochure, before we had a website. I don't even think I had a business card. But the Gomes family from Florida, Andrea and Marfisa, enrolled their sons, Rodrigo and Eduardo. They paid their deposit on nothing but faith. We met with them, they asked us some questions, they introduced the boys, and then they said, we trust you. Where do we sign? So I want them to know, and I want all of you to know, that we take that faith very seriously and we will not let you down. We are here to create the best possible school. We spared no expense on the facility, the furniture, the food service, the instructional technology, and most importantly, our faculty. Incidentally,
I'm in! Oh my God.
Oh, Zoe, great. You're live, Zoe. We had some difficulties getting Zoe Zarate in from Malaysia, but she's with us now. I was going to say that this week on Tuesday, we drove a group of us to Porto to meet with our uniform manufacturer and to select our uniforms. And I have to tell you, I was exceedingly impressed with the people we met there. We met the owner, we toured the facility. The selection and quality are outstanding, and they can tailor any garment to our needs. This company was one of the finalists, along with a few other Portuguese providers and the Italian company that services our sister school in Switzerland. But I must say that I found the quality and the cost of this company and their garments to be top rate. And of course, we wanted to stay local as much as possible. And while I'm talking about uniform, I'll say that our uniform choices will grow as the school grows. We're trying to have different choices for elementary and middle school. And our uniform will have choice for all students, because after all, we're not trying to create identical students. We just want to have a uniform so everyone looks sharply dressed and respectful. So some will like more sporty clothes, perhaps. Some will prefer more formal dress. We have all of that. And after we get this program launched, then we hope our parent council, the TASIS Parents Association, will join us in being part of the uniform selection every year. In fact, maybe even take that over for us. Our furniture provider is Haba, which is a German company who use mostly natural wood to create the most beautiful and robust furniture. All of our teachers have had a hand in selecting their furniture for their classrooms. You've maybe seen it on our website. We're working with a local Portuguese company who works with Haba. The company is called Cristina Ciapa. And I want to give a shout out to the representative Camila, who's been a dream to work with and who produced all of the 3D renderings for each of our classrooms. We will be ordering that furniture tomorrow, and it will be here sometime toward the end of June. Anyway, back to our teachers. You know, I come from a country, Canada, which ranks in the top 10 internationally in testing for both math and English. The TIMSS, Trends in International Math and Science, and the OECD's PISA tests. Canada has always done very well in those tests, and our teachers are very well paid, and they should be. They're often the most important non-family members involved in the education of your children. And I've said this before, I've not hired any teacher who I would not have extreme confidence in working with my own children, and I haven't hired any teacher that I wouldn't happily pay double what they're making as a salary. Teachers in Portugal don't make near what they deserve, and certainly you want us to hire the best teachers because that's what you deserve and that's what your children deserve, and that's what we've done. So I've said that before, I say it every Thursday, I believe, because it's important. A school is a physical plant, it's an administration, it's a website, but most importantly, it's the relationship between the teachers in our school and the young people they're guiding that is most important, and that's what makes a great school. So I'm going to introduce a couple of those teachers to you momentarily. Before I do, I want to say something about our curriculum. First of all, the curriculum that we use is called the Core Knowledge Curriculum, developed by a researcher named E.D. Hirsch, Jr. It's only offered at a small number of schools in the world, and it's offered at all the TASA schools. It covers a 6-year period and teaches young people what we believe all educated people should know. And for clarity, the core knowledge curriculum is not the same as something you may have heard of called the Common Core, which is a US set of standards. It's not a curriculum, and but the core knowledge curriculum meets or exceeds all of those standards. So we needed someone to work closely with our faculty to make sure we had the highest level of fidelity to our curriculum. And you've heard me say this before, some schools develop their own curriculum, some schools use national curricula, others allow their teachers to develop the curriculum each year. I've had many discussions with parents about why we don't follow the IB, PYP, and MYP curricula, for example. Both of those are great curricula when done well, and when teachers have a lot of professional development embedded in their teachings so they can deliver a really consistent program. But as we know, at most schools, and including international schools, that is not the case. And so we've decided to go with a research-based curriculum as our foundation, delivered by expert pedagogists, teachers. We believe this is the only way to ensure we meet the lofty learning goals for our students. So we found somebody who has the experience and knowledge to work closely with our teachers as they adapt this new curriculum. Gina Anderson, who joins us tonight from Salt Lake City, Utah, where she has been involved in 2 core knowledge schools, including teaching at TASA Switzerland for 6 years in their day and summer programs. Gina holds a master's in education from the University of Utah, a Bachelor in Science in Elementary Education from Brigham Young University, which is also in Utah. Gina will be our core knowledge curriculum specialist, coordinator and mentor. Gina has taught history and geography, English as a second language, and also boasts experience as an instructional coach, learning disabilities intervention specialist, and an assessment director. Secondly, but equally important to our approach to teaching is our approach to teaching math. Now, many of you know I have a degree in mathematics and taught for many years. To me, mathematics is an exceedingly important subject for many reasons. First of all, it's the pillar on which most scientific discovery is founded. Most of the laws of our physical world adhere to calculus formulas or formulas derived from calculus. and are supported through and made predictable through statistics. Secondly, math is a tool required for so many other endeavors. When we wish to prove something, we often reach to mathematics to assist in providing the undeniable evidence. We have selected a math pedagogy at TASIS we believe best helps young people to develop strong number sense and mathematical reasoning. It's based on a problem-solving and engineering approach, and I say a pedagogy because it's a different way of teaching math. It's not a new math, but it is a way of teaching math that is very unique. It's helped to propel Singapore to be the #1 country in international math testing for the last 3 decades. So our second guest tonight is Zoe Zarate. Zoe, as you heard, joins us from Malaysia, which I believe is, which I know is just north of Singapore. And she leads the Singapore math curriculum and mentoring at her own international school. Originally from the Netherlands, so we did her undergraduate work at the London Metropolitan University and postgraduate studies at University of Derby, and later her education certification from Auckland University of Technology in New Zealand. As mentioned, Zoe is teaching at an international school in Malaysia where she is both the Singapore math coach and mentor. Zoe has a daughter, Amarina, and a son, Adam, who will be joining us in the fall. And by the way, if you need an example of commitment, Zoe is still working for her current school. She's been doing a ton of work for us at TASIS and also joins us tonight, which is 3 o'clock in the morning in her home in Malaysia. So enough for me. I want to welcome these two excellent teachers, educators, and people, and I'm going to start with asking them both some questions. And I have to give Andrea a heads up so she can pivot between the two. So I'm going to ask the first question. We'll ask the first question of both of you. However, Gina, you can answer first. So the first question is, tell me about what attracted you to teaching, and then secondly, what attracted you to TASIS Portugal?
Okay. I'm one of those that always wanted to be a teacher from the time I was 5 years old. I loved school. It was my happy place. And it just was a natural thing for me to do. I majored in education right when I went to university, and I've honestly never looked back. And now, I mean, I keep doing it because I love kids. I love how much fun they are. I love their excitement and their curiosity for the world. So that's why I got into teaching and why I'm still at teaching. But as far as TASIS Portugal, when I heard about TASIS Portugal opening, it was just kind of like exactly what I'd been waiting for. I'd been wanting to return to TASIS. I spent 5 summers at their middle school program and 1 academic year teaching grade 4. And I loved my experience there. I met some great friends, had some really amazing experiences, and had always hoped to return in some capacity, but the timing just hadn't been right. So when I heard about Portugal, I thought, well, maybe this is something that could happen. Just because I've loved being a part of TASIS, and I knew that they were core knowledge. I've taught the core knowledge sequence for several years in 3 different grades, and I'm currently in a school that's not a core knowledge school. And it's only reaffirmed to me just how much I love core knowledge and how important it is to build that background knowledge in our students. And coming to TASIS Portugal, like the last kind of clincher for me was the fact that it was a brand new school. I've helped open 2 other schools, the school I'm currently at, and my first teaching job was at a brand new school. And it is so hard and exhausting, but it's so rewarding. It's really special to be a part of something from the ground up and help build that culture. And so being able to come back to the TASIS schools and do core knowledge and build a school was, I mean, it was a dream come true. So I had to jump on it.
Great, thank you, Gina. Zoe, I'll repeat the question for you.
That's okay. Thank you.
Okay. I've asked Gina, and I'll ask you what attracted you first to teaching, and then why TASIS Portugal?
What attracted me to teaching? Well, it's something for me has, I'm not sure what it is. Something that for me, it's a passion. Okay, teaching for me has started early on as well. I come from a really large family, and I've been blessed with nieces and nephews, and I grew up around them. So I've always enjoyed not only being around them, but also working with them. So I took it upon myself to tutor them as and when this was needed. And choosing my path in college or university, this was not I was destined. I've always said I was destined to become a teacher, so there was no contemplating what to do. I knew that I was going to become a teacher, and a good teacher too. Why TASIS? Well, I started searching for a job a couple of years ago. And I've been living in Malaysia for the past 7 to 8 years now. So knowing that our children are growing older, and having been away from my own home in the Netherlands for so long, I knew that I wanted to return back to Europe. The question was, where do we live? In England or in Holland? And then we were of course, thinking about the prospects of us living in Holland and in England, and we're not very keen about the weather, as most of you know, in England. So then we started thinking about Portugal, and then we were fortunate to visit Portugal last year, and we absolutely fell in love with the country and everything that it has to offer. And then, of course, my research continued onto schools that were in Portugal. And I came across TASIS, and of course I started my research to learn more about the background and about the philosophy and its values. And it really, this is when the excitement started. I knew I wanted to work for TASIS because it resonates what my values are, and I am a family community person. I've worked in an international school for such a long time, and I really value the schools that do value its community. And I knew straight away that this would be a great fit for us. So yes, I too jumped on that opportunity.
Great, thank you for that. Well done, Zoe. The next question for both of you, and Gina, will get you to answer first again. What makes a great school, and what are the things that great teachers do consistently?
I think the most important thing to make a great school, because every school does things a little differently, they have their own way of doing things, but I think that across the board you'll see for a great school there's that community, that feeling of community, and the partnership between the home and the school. It's kind of like we're all in this together type of a feeling, that shared vision. Because of the schools that I've worked at, those that had the shared vision and worked together as a community were the strongest. That's where people wanted to come. That's where they wanted to send their kids. That's where the teachers wanted to teach. So I think the community and that shared vision. Did you also ask about great teachers?
I asked, what are the things great teachers do consistently?
Oh, I think the most important thing for teachers, and I think that this is why everybody goes into teaching, because they care about kids. They want them to be successful. They want to prepare them. But I think along with that caring is, and this is something I've kind of learned in my current position as an instructional coach, great teachers self-reflect. Great teachers know that there's probably something they can work on, always trying to improve their practice. And I think that goes along with care, because it's wanting to be the best that you can be for your students that kind of motivates you to improve and to keep reflecting and doing the best that you can do.
Thank you, Gina. Over to you, Zoe.
Right. So to answer the question of what makes a great school, to me, a great school is where it's the students. Basically, the students make a great school, because there is absolutely nothing like having a school where your own child wakes up every morning with excitement, wanting to run back to that school where they spend most of their days in. So yes, I think students for sure. But what makes the place great is the teachers. And naturally, this goes without saying, where the environment that that the educational setting offers for our students and for our own children, I feel that it should be one that allows students to be themselves, allows them to develop into confident little human beings and find that passion, whatever that may be, and follow it. So yeah, I think that the whole community in its sense has a role to play in this, because it's all about having those strong foundational relationship for not just for between students and teachers, but also parents who do play a great role in this. And to answer the second question, which was what makes great teachers, I think I partly answered that. Great teachers make they are reflective practitioners. I feel it is really important for a teacher, a good quality teacher, to be adaptable and to be flexible. I mean, we go from one classroom to another classroom, we move around between the elementary years, and being able to adapt the way we deliver a curriculum, the way we approach and speak to the students. I think it's yes. So being a reflective practitioner is definitely one. And providing nurturing environment with learning focused as well, to ensure that the students have that sense of belonging in the school, and many more, but I'll stop there.
Oh, that's great.
May I interrupt for a moment? Apologies. I forgot to remind people to submit questions that they might have. Right on the screen, you'll see the little question mark button. Just click on that and you can submit your questions, and I'll curate those at the end of the webinar. Thank you.
Thank you, Zoe. Thank you, Gina. You both hit on some important points that obviously TASIS has embraced, which is developing community, a partnership with parents, which we talk about a great deal, and also about being reflective teachers. That is, engaging in continual reflection and evaluation of our own teaching and our own pedagogy. And so we've built that in, as you know, every other Friday afternoon to gather together as faculty and talk about how we become individually greater teachers, and then communally a greater school. And those are really important values to the school. And the other piece of that is, and you both hit on it, you didn't say it exactly this way, but we want young people to be happy in their experience at school. And obviously we want our teachers and our community to be happy. But we want more than that. We don't just want happy children, we want happy, intelligent, knowledgeable children. And so we've built a really solid academic program, and we're going to support students to be successful and achieve in that program. I believe personally that happiness comes from, in many cases, from achievement, not just from being surrounded by things you like. We all know that we would, given our druthers, often waste a bunch of time. You can fill in the blank doing whatever, but that doesn't build self-esteem and confidence. You get self-esteem and confidence from doing things and being successful at them and having people to support you through that. And so that's a big part of what we will do here, and you both talked about that, so thank you. And Zoe, I'm going to put you on the spot because I know that your husband is joining, obviously joining you and your family in this big move to Portugal, and I know your husband is going to another international school. So I was just curious about how long it took for the two of you to decide that your children would be coming to TASIS versus the other school, but you can answer that later. I'm kidding, Zoe, by the way, I'm kidding. Well, kind of. All right, we're going to move on to the next question. Both of you have been leading e-learning at your current schools. Can you talk a little bit about how that's going? Because we've had mixed reviews of how it's going here in Portugal at a variety of schools. We know that at our TASIS sister schools, it's going very well. We're told by parents who've completed surveys every week at those schools. Can you talk about your experience with your schools? And I know, before you answer, that we're all, and particularly parents who are involved tonight, are getting a little fatigued with teaching children at home. We know that that is not the ultimate environment, but talk a little bit about how it's going with your schools, if you don't mind, and maybe Zoe, you can start us with that.
Sure. I can't lie about it. It has been challenging. It has been challenging, I think, on all families, students, teachers. It's been a whole new way of teaching. I mean, we've got our technology in place at my school, being an Apple distinguished school. So you can ask me about the apps that we have been using in the classroom. And it's been great, but honestly, that means absolutely nothing when we've started online learning, because we feel that online learning is so impersonalized. Although we do teach live, and we have our pre-recorded lessons, it doesn't feel that that it is personal. So we have been taking steps towards personalizing our lessons. We've adapted a lot of things. I mean, it's all about adapting. It's all about learning. We've had lots of surveys done. We've heard parents' voices. We've heard students' voices, teachers' voices, and made sure that this whole e-learning is adapted and delivered in a way that is less stressful for parents as well as for students. So the whole reason of having pre-recorded lessons and having your own face as a teacher being recorded, and you can imagine the steps involved in, first of all, recording your own lesson and then re-recording that to include yourself in there. And of course we do, we go out of our way to make things easy for students. This is what we are there for, but it is all time consuming. And we know that it is temporary. We do all know it is temporary. It will go away soon. We're all going to be back in the school, standing in front of the students, teaching, which is what we do. What we do so very well. And having gone through all of these efforts in preparing things and making sure that parents are not stressed and can teach their children in their own time, was really worth it while, because I've had students tell me, oh, Miss Zoe, it felt really great the other day. I felt like you were right inside my house teaching me. And that did make such a huge difference. And we have been taking steps to personalize all of our lessons. So yeah, that's just a little bit of what I have been doing. So I do a lot of preparation and a lot of teaching during this online learning.
Thank you, Zoe. And it sounds like you've learned a lot through that process, but it also sounds like you've solicited opinions from your parents and your students, which is really important in adapting your lessons.
Absolutely.
Gina, how's it going for you in Utah?
It's going pretty well. If you'd asked me that a month ago, I might have had a different answer. But our teachers have been rock stars. They've been asked to do something that they were not prepared to do, that they were not expecting, and they've risen to the occasion. And it's been really, they've been stressed out. Don't get me wrong, they've been stressed out, but it's been really great to see them adapt for their students and for their situations. And we had some teachers that are just not technically adept, and they have been resistant to doing it, and this has kind of forced them to do it. And it's been fun to see their confidence grow in their new technical skills and to realize that they can learn new things, which of course is what we want to instill in our students, that we're lifelong learners, just like we want them to be. We've learned that you can't replace a teacher. A computer, an app doesn't replace a teacher. And I think that's probably been the hardest thing for us is we do live lessons, we do recorded lessons, but missing kind of that face-to-face connection has been difficult for our teachers and our students. But for me personally, in my role as an instructional coach, has been trying to help my teachers, like, how do we translate good teaching into remote learning, rethinking what is good teaching, what kinds of things can we do the same, what kinds of things do we need to change, and how can we collaborate better to make this work for everyone. And I think the collaboration has been something that in our district, it's been a little forced. It's one of our big goals, but it's been forced. But this is probably the most authentic collaboration I've seen since I've been here. And that's been really great to see teachers coming together and truly work together for the good of their students. So it's been hard, don't get me wrong, but we've seen a lot of great things come out of it too.
That's fantastic. I've never met a teacher, at least I can't recall meeting a teacher whose professional goal was to be an e-learning instructor, right? We all get a lot of energy from working with young people. It's where our passion lies, and that relationship is so important. And it's more challenging to develop those relationships online than it is face-to-face. But it sounds like you're both managing that very well. For people that are listening, we'll have our senior academic leadership team on in 2 weeks, and they're going to talk about TASIS Portugal's e-learning plan for September, should we need to employ one, or maybe not in September, but at some point in the future, we will likely have to deliver e-learning in some format, and they're going to talk about their experience. They're going to talk about the TASIS Portugal approach, and they'll also be open to questions from you. So we're looking forward to that. That'll be 2 Thursdays from now. All right, we've got a few specific questions before we open it up. Zoe, can you talk briefly about why Singapore math? What are the strengths of the Singapore math approach?
Sure. Singapore maths approach, so it's based on Jerome Bruner's representation, and it's the CPA approach, so concrete, pictorial, and abstract. It's progressive. Students progress between starting from concrete to pictorial to abstract. It's a curriculum that has problem solving at its heart. You can explain the actual framework of Singapore maths using a pentagon method, which is based on skills. So not just the concept that is taught, just like every other Singapore math. It's not just like every other Singapore math. So the concept that's taught, the skills that is experienced through students using manipulatives. It's about the process, the reasoning, the communication, the thinking skills to develop that fluency in mathematics. It's about attitudes of the students and how confident and comfortable they should be in their approach, and how they should persevere when they do come across the tasks that are more challenging. And Singapore math is really amazing because it prepares students for all of those. And of course, finally, the final side, which is the metacognition, so about students monitoring their own learning. Its strength really lies in 2 areas: the textbook and the use of manipulatives. So it's not about drilling and killing and memorizing facts like maybe some of us have been used to. It's a tool to help visualize the conceptual understanding, and it's also a tool to help the development and the improvement of intellectual competencies, solving problems and thinking critically, and also preparing the students for the 21st century learning. So at TASIS, we aim to increase this level of proficiency, and we do this through the use of textbooks as well as the manipulatives. So why? You said why Singapore maths? Well, that's some of the reasons. So it's some of its features are that at any level, regardless of where your students or where your children are at, whether they are struggling in maths, whether they are average learners, or whether they are advanced learners, this Singapore curriculum is designed to meet the needs of all of those students. It's based on mastering at every level. Also, it covers less topics, but in greater depth. So students are really able to develop that conceptual understanding, first of all, through that concrete material, and then progressively towards the abstract. One of the conferences that I had attended here in Malaysia, the BET conference, was with all the educational leadership from all around the world who came in to share their ideas on building a changing culture to deliver a 21st century learning about a year ago. it was interesting. What caught my attention was that the World Economic Forum, when this was shared with us, the reports, there has been a significant shift in the kinds of skills required in students to succeed in the future. And I feel that when I heard this, I felt that Singapore Maths really aligns so closely with these set of skills, and I'd like to read them to you. So in that list, in the top 10 list, problem solving was number 1, critical thinking, creativity, people management, coordinating with force, which is something so important. Singapore Maths really does teach students, well, through Singapore Maths, we will be teaching students, I mean, how to deal with failure, how to deal when they find tasks challenging, when they get to that stage. What is it that they can rely back on? And they will all develop the confidence and know that they have the tools. It doesn't matter what kind of word problems you would throw them with, they are going to be able to fall back on their skills and on the knowledge that they have been taught. Moving on that list, you have emotional intelligence, judgment and decision making. Again, this is really very involved in mathematics, negotiation skills and persuading, reasoning, then finally the cognitive flexibility. So I just like to say that Singapore Maths is not just any curriculum that we have chosen. I really do believe that this is the right curriculum for students, and at TASIS we will aim to increase this level of proficiency, of course. So yeah, I hope that, you know, students are looking forward to this as much as teachers and as much as I am.
Thank you, Zoe. And you said some important things there. You know, I've read the World Economic Forum and the OECD reports on 21st century thinking skills. What kind of skills will young people need to be successful in the 21st century? Which is interesting that we're talking about that, because of course we've been in the 21st century for 2 decades now. But we often reference critical thinking and problem solving. And people think that you can do that without having a base of knowledge. And Brunner and other researchers have talked about building knowledge builds on knowledge. You must scaffold the learning process. And so if young people don't have knowledge, it's going to be very difficult for them to be critical thinkers. What do you think critically about if you don't know anything? How can you solve problems with no background? So these are skills that we talk about being 21st century skills. I'd like to think they've always been important skills, and a classical education like the one TASIS is offering is probably the best preparation to be a critical thinker and a problem solver, and Singapore Maths certainly complements that. Gina's probably going to talk about that as well when she tells us about why core knowledge and what are the strengths of core knowledge.
Well, like he said, knowledge builds upon knowledge. The more you know, the more you can learn. So he mentioned earlier the Common Core, which are the state standards in the United States, and those are mostly based on skills. What can people do? And core knowledge takes the approach that it is both. It is knowledge and skills, and they are equally important. Not that one is more important than the other. But a big part of that is for literacy, because decoding, again, is only half of reading. Comprehension requires knowledge. So the nice thing about core knowledge that kind of separates it a little bit from other knowledge-based curriculum is that it's cumulative. So core knowledge actually starts in pre-K and goes up to 8. We won't be doing that at TASIS, but it builds upon each previous grade. So for instance, in first grade, they learn about European exploration, just really basic facts about European exploration. A couple of years later, they come back and they revisit it in third grade with more information. But because they've already been in first grade, they have knowledge to build on, they're ready for the next step. And then it's revisited again in 5th grade. So it's cumulative, it goes all the way through and just keeps building. And the nice thing is, I know one concern with parents can be that, my kid has never had core knowledge before, so is he going to be behind coming in at grade 3 without having been through it? And because it spirals and they keep revisiting those topics, they'll be able to pick it up. And that's one of the really nice things about it. But what I love about core knowledge is that it integrates all the subjects across the board. And not all the knowledge-based curricula that I've researched do that. So for instance, in an ancient Roman unit, they would talk about the geography of the Mediterranean region, the history of ancient Rome. In literature, they would read Roman myths. In art, they would study, the Pantheon, mosaics, things like that. So it reaches all the way across, and those kind of cross-curricular connections help make that knowledge firmer, like a more firm foundation for them to build on. So.
Thank you, Gina. Great answer. I know you're going to get more questions about this as the night goes on. But I wanted to pick up on your Roman theme, because we have specifically ordered from our uniform company a toga for every student as part of the uniform, just for that unit.
Oh, that would be awesome.
The staff have to wear them too, of course. All right, so I think, Zoe, you're going to get yourself prepared for the question, how do young people who've not studied the Singapore math pedagogy, how do they prepare, and how long will it take them to adapt? I'll let that question percolate with you for a few moments, but I'm just going to ask Gina another question. Gina, some people interpret a content-rich curriculum, which obviously the core knowledge curriculum is, as a teacher-centered approach, or in fact, just memorization. Can you enlighten us about the way core knowledge works and what it looks like in practice?
Yeah, there is definitely an opportunity for explicit instruction. I think that's what they mean when they say like a teacher-centered approach. But good teaching in a knowledge-based program looks the same as it does in a skill-based program. There's explicit instruction, there's small group instruction, cooperative learning groups, project-based learning, simulations. It's just all based on central knowledge that we want all kids to have. In kindergarten through 2nd grade, there is a read aloud every day. And so it takes that knowledge and kind of builds it into your regular school day. So it comes down to good teachers. If you have good teachers that know how to teach beyond standing up and spouting out facts to memorize, then you're going to have a great program.
Super. I see that we're 40 minutes into the program. As usual, I've talked too much, so we're going to open it up now to questions. Amy's going to curate those questions. We don't normally get to all the questions, and because we have both of you here tonight, we might go a few minutes over time, if that's all right with you. Zoe, you're about to get up for work anyway shortly, so it shouldn't bother you. We might extend the evening by about 10 minutes, if that's all right. People, of course, can always turn us off. All right, Amy, over to you.
Thank you, Keith. To Gina and Zoe, we've had a number of great questions. I'll start out with this one. How do you plan to capture children's progress in terms of innovation, creativity, and other skills mentioned in WEF, OECD, and World Bank reports?
Either of you can take a shot at that. I can take a shot at it if you want. Who wants to go first?
I'm going to need you to repeat it before I take a shot at it.
Yes. And it was talking about innovation and creativity, relating, I think, to some of the comments that Zoe made. So how do you plan to capture children's progress in terms of innovation, creativity, and other skills, such as problem solving that you mentioned, Zoe, that we read a lot about in reports coming from places like the OECD and World Bank?
Okay, I would like to take that actually. When you think about measuring their progress in Singapore maths, the way the curriculum has been designed, you look at the word problems. Okay, you start teaching word problems through the representations, the use of representations, and these word problems gradually get harder. Not only that, but also there are two different types of word problems. You have the routine word problems, which is your average word problems that you and I could look at and could think, all right, so I've got these tools and I can give it a go. And highly likely you will get the answers correctly. And then you have your non-routine word problems, which is the more complex word problems. And as the students learn a concept within the same content, you have these questions that do gradually get harder, and it does really get challenging. And you've also got the different aspects of teaching, the different activities, the variations of the activities. So they learn through exploration, discussions, and reflection. And all of these requires those skills to think critically, to show, demonstrate their understanding of which. And of course, throughout each topic, you will get to assess their progress. You will get to, this is done through formative assessment, but also through a summative assessment at the end of a topic. Essentially, it comes down to the content that students are exposed to in Singapore Maths.
Thank you, Zoe. I'm just going to add a couple things to Zoe's answer, which was excellent. Our academic leaders at the school are blogging on our website now. So if you haven't visited our website recently, you'll get to see recent blogs by Carrie Trigg, by Andrea Balaz, and by Erica Harrow. And Erica has written specifically about learning and assessment. And so that might be worth visiting. She talks about assessment, because that was the question, I think. She talks about assessment for learning, assessment as learning, and assessment of learning, and differentiates between those three forms of assessment. So I would encourage you to visit the website and see what Erica has written about that. Plus, I would add, of course, that our approach to teaching and learning, our curriculum, is very unique. Not many schools take an approach to learning that doesn't only teach students things, it helps them to become better thinkers. So if you look at the involvement of violin and chess, physical activity every day, which we believe is very important, yoga, visible thinking, and a disproportionate amount of time spent on reading, writing, speaking, and mathematics. No school that I know of, at least, is approaching learning like we are at TASIS, and we think it's going to be highly successful, and students are going to develop a great deal of skill, but also a great deal of confidence through that process. So those are some of the ways that we're going to be creative in teaching, but also in assessing learning. And Gina, you probably want to add to that?
Yeah, one thing that I would like to see in the classrooms, this is something that I've been researching lately, is Dr. Joseph Renzulli's school-wide enrichment model. He's from the University of Connecticut. And his program it started out as a gifted and talented program, but it's evolved into something for everybody, which basically is talent development and giving children a chance to solve real world problems through hands-on learning. So like one of the principles of the school-wide enrichment model, SEM, are the expression styles. There are 10 different expression styles, and students get a chance to show what they know based on different, I'll just give examples, it's easier. There's a music expression style, there is audiovisual expression style, there's a written expression style. So students can choose whichever one kind of fits them, fits their personality, to show their teacher what they know. So that, along with a couple of other principles from the school-wide enrichment model, I think could really help with that.
Great, thank you, Gina. Amy?
This is a question for Gina, so we can keep the camera right on her. So Gina, how, if at all, will the core knowledge curriculum be adapted to Portugal?
Good question.
That's a good question. The biggest change that we're going to see in the core knowledge curriculum is the removal of U.S. history. We know that most of our students are not North American students, so it's not really relevant to them. We will be leaving in the world history strands. We're working together with a few of our local staff members to kind of come up with a program to teach Portuguese and European history to replace that US history. And some of the literature as well is based on American literature. And one of our, I can't remember his name, Sergio, he's working on helping us kind of not get rid of, but adapt our literature, poetry, all that focus from US based to more Eurocentric.
Yeah, Amy, sorry to interrupt you. I think it's important that people know that our faculty have already started working together. Sergio has been working with Erica and working with Gina and others too, and William, to make sure that we adapt our curriculum for Portugal. It's not that we won't teach North American history, of course, and geography, because they're part of the world. We'll teach it as part of our world history and geography focus, but also we will have a special focus on Portugal because it's our home and because it's such a beautiful country and has such a rich history. So we're looking forward to weaving that into our program from the earliest ages right through the core knowledge curriculum through grade 5.
Thank you, Keith. And this next question is for Zoe, and it's from a student, but we have another question that fits well here as well. In your experience, has Singapore math approach helped a student regain their love of math if they've lost it? And then the student part of the question is how hard it is to learn the Singapore math way if you haven't done it before.
Okay, they are both very good questions. And yes, in my experience, when students have been exposed to Singapore maths for the first time, this was about 7 years ago, they truly, to start with, found it hard to tackle the non-routine word problem. But throughout the year, as they got the hang of how Singapore maths works, and it's really beautiful because it's taught in a really structured way. So from when you start a new concept, building onto your previous one, to how you develop the confidence in using different materials, different resources. So depending on where your confidence lies, as the students have tackled problems and as they have gone through showing their understanding through sharing, through writing as well, because in maths, in Singapore maths, is one of the areas where it's called maths journals, and the students were expected to write their understanding of the concept, and it's not always easy, but with the right tools, the right vocabulary, and the right experience, the students have grown their love for maths. And by the end of the year, I have had students tell me, throughout the year as well, I love maths, right? This is something that I never thought I would do. And I have the full confidence to say that no matter which school you come from or what maths you have done, we will help you to get on the right track as soon as possible. Remember that if you've never done it before, right, there's always room for improvement in your ways and thinking mathematically. So yes, and that's also one of the incentives as well that my students, or in generally in maths, students have to. Why do they work hard? What makes them persevere and tackle those challenges? Is because, well, once you have learned the routine problems and how to solve them, then you're able to challenge yourself in tackling the more complex word problems where the quantity is not given and it's unknown. So there's always, that incentive to work harder. It does depend on yourself, how hard you want to push yourself, really. So you have the tools to learn to just progress and make it to the next stage as a struggling learner, I would say, or if you're an average learner, you can challenge yourself and you can achieve at higher level. If you feel that you're an advanced learner and you love maths already, then well, there's always way to challenge you through the enrichment materials. Amy, did I answer all the questions? I'm not sure if there were two.
You did. Thank you very much. Right. And I have a question that applies to both Zoe and Gina. In your experience as teachers, what is the best motivation tool or technique for a student when they don't want to learn something? What is an approach that you might take in your class to help overcome that challenge?
Okay. Shall I go?
Please.
Okay. So I think when students don't want to learn, there is a reason for that. Either the task does not meet their needs, or there is something that obviously there's something that needs to be addressed. And digging deeper to find out what it is that is bothering the students, that is stopping the students from performing as well as they could, as the start, I think, is the start of looking at how to solve it. In a classroom where the curriculum or the lessons have been planned to meet the needs of all individuals, I think there should not be a problem with students not wanting to learn. At the end of the day, we as teachers, it's our job to make lessons fun and engaging and to the students' ability. So when you say they don't want to learn, obviously that's something that needs to really be addressed. And it's not a problem when it comes to Singapore maths, because I have not had a single student honestly saying, I do not like maths. Even some of my lower able students who were struggling have found that incentive and have found that way to develop their confidence. So yeah, breaking the steps down, breaking the problems down into smaller steps and looking at how we can solve it, I would say is the way to go about it.
Thank you for that response. Gina, did you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, as far as helping students that maybe don't want to learn something, I think a lot of the way that you can solve that is if you have a good relationship with your students, you'll be able to find out what it is that's holding them back. I have found that there aren't too many kids that don't want to learn, but there's usually some sort of stumbling block in their way that's preventing them from learning. And it could be confidence. It could be they're feeling overwhelmed with something that's completely new. Maybe they're having a bad day. So I think it's really important that teachers have a relationship with their students, that they can find out what motivates that student and really dig in and find what the real problem is. Because it could be any number of things. And so how you would address it would depend on what it is.
Terrific. And I think that segues nicely into the next question. Tom writes, how do you create a class environment where kids of different levels all thrive and prosper?
Is it okay if I take this one?
Please, thank you.
Where kids at all different levels thrive and prosper, it starts with the teacher and creating that classroom climate of safety. Because kids are going to come in at all different levels, and they need to be accepted for where they are. And the teacher is the one that models that and makes that classroom a safe place where mistakes are okay, mistakes are encouraged. We're all at different places. We're all here to learn and build that atmosphere as a team, a class family, however you want to word it. And I think that starts with the teacher modeling that he makes mistakes too. That's okay. We learn from them. That's why we're here. That's the only way we grow. So that creating the safe environment in order to learn and to grow and to make those mistakes, I think, is key for that.
Thank you, Gina. That's a great answer. And I'll give one final question tonight. And I apologize that we're not getting to all of them, but I know Keith has a few words at the end also. So for both Gina and Zoe, because the end of the school year for most children right now is mostly online, are there any resources or methods in particular that you would suggest as preparation for all future students? This is a parent of a third grader, for example, but any go-to resources that you have and would recommend?
I'd take this. Yes, of course, there's plenty of online resources that you could use. I just want to clarify the question first, though. Was this looking for resources to help them prepare for next year, or was this to help them in their current situation?
Looking ahead toward next year, I think,
Okay.
Amy, and sorry, Zoe and Amy, I just wanted to remind everyone that Zoe has been working on a Singapore math problem solving, not a booklet, but a series of problems that young people can tackle at home with their parents or without, and they're all home-based. And she's put a lot of thought into this, and so that package of curated questions we will post on our website before the end of the month. Gina and Erica have also been working on, and Bill Brooks have been working on a reading package for the summer for students who want to get a bit of a head start. None of this is mandatory, by the way, but for students who want to get a bit of a head start, we have quite a robust reading list, which is almost complete. And so both of those resources we will put online for families, and they can choose what they want to do, when they want to do it over the coming months. So I'm not sure if that answers the question completely. If not, you can ask Zoe and Gina separately.
I think that serves as a great answer for that, Keith, and we will certainly share these resources as well in our newsletters, our weekly newsletters, so that as soon as they're available, you'll know when and where you can get them.
Can I also add one?
Absolutely.
And I think actually Keith has mentioned it before, but I think it's worth mentioning again. The What Your Student Needs to Know series. They start from kinder and go up to grade 6. And it's just kind of a summary of the topics that they'll be studying in the grade. And that can kind of address for those parents that are worried that maybe my kid doesn't have the background knowledge they need. You can buy the grade before. You can find them on Amazon Spain and Amazon UK. I checked, and they're on both of those. But those are a great resource. They're really user-friendly. It's student-friendly language. It might be above some of the reading levels depending on the grade, but it would be a great read-aloud resource to kind of get them excited for the school year.
Fantastic. Thank you, Gina. And I would just add finally that we've got lots of thank yous to both Gina and Zoe. And Gina, one parent said that she particularly enjoyed you talking about the different forms of expression, and that from an artistic viewpoint, a lot of students express themselves in non-traditional academic ways, creatively, excuse me, and with imaginative problem solving. So that really resonated. And Zoe, we've got some requests for you to teach Dutch in your free time.
Well, I was hoping to do that, yes, amongst many other things. I mean, I love teaching, and I already do what I am so passionate about, maths, and I don't mind offering Dutch as maybe as a CCA club. But I did have my thoughts about CCA clubs. I've run some wonderful STEAM projects and held inter-school competitions, which I was hoping to replicate at TASIS. I've also have been asking for a stable at the back of our school, since our grounds are so huge, so that I could teach horse riding and not just Dutch or maths or a STEAM project. So yes, absolutely, I will think about that.
Well, thank you both very much. And Keith, I will turn it over to you to share who our guests will be next week and to give your closing remarks.
Okay, I just wanted to let Zoe know that we actually have a very large equestrian center about 400 meters from our campus. So you will have every opportunity to teach courses to speak Dutch. On the concept of languages, or the topic of languages, we've been discussing what our third and fourth languages will be available at middle school. And so we're still curating that list, but we believe we will be able to, well, we're certainly going to poll our students and parents, but we're hoping to be able to offer Spanish, French, and German. So obviously beyond Portuguese, which is mandatory. So we'll have more conversations about that in the future, and we're certainly going to be asking our parents for direction in that regard. I wanted to just circle back to a topic that was raised a number of times tonight and somewhat in the past, the topic of assessment. And again, I would encourage you to go to our website and read some of the blogs on this. However, the research on assessment is clear. Assessment at a young age that is giving students grades is not a motivator for most young people. It can motivate people to get higher grades because they are seeking a grade, not because they are seeking knowledge. And it also can certainly encourage competition between students. We don't believe in either of those. We're not trying to promote students to get high grades because high grades are important in life, nor because they should be competitive with one another. So we are really de-emphasizing grading in the lower school, but not de-emphasizing assessment, because assessment is something that allows teachers to become better at what they do. When they assess their students, they know what their students know, and therefore they're ready to move on, or they're not ready to move on. So they need more structured lesson. They may have to revisit topics. They may need more support, but all of that is about assessing daily, knowing where your students are in their learning, but it's not about necessarily giving grades for things. So our academic leadership team, and in fact, all of our faculty, are giving feedback about what is the best way for us to assess our students and let parents know and students know where they stand vis-a-vis our expectations and curricular outcomes, both with skills and knowledge, but de-emphasizing the process of giving grades. And I've got a lot to say on that topic. Maybe I'll write a blog on it, but we're at the end of our time. And so those of you who are still with us, thank you. We're 6 minutes over time, I see. I just want to let you know that next week we have a big group joining us. We're not sure how we're going to manage this group because they're quite an energetic group and there are 4 of them. But joining us to represent the visual arts, one of our art teachers from California, Betty Urban, also to discuss performing arts, music and drama, our music teacher, Luis Sareva, who's joining us from Spain. Luis is actually Portuguese, but he's joining us. He and his wife, Joanna, are joining us in the fall, coming back from Spain, as well our 2 physical education teachers, Ines Vilas and Alfredo Silva. Ines is in Egypt and Alfredo is in Kazakhstan. And they'll be joining us next week. And we're going to have a fun time talking about physical activity, physical education, our approach to the arts, both performing and visual, and give you a better idea of how we're going to do that with our elementary and middle school program. Before we leave tonight, though, I want to congratulate some of our incoming students, in particular for their contributions to our Name the Mascot competition, which actually isn't a competition, and we haven't made any decisions, but it's fun to receive student input. So I want to thank students Leonore and Valeria for their submissions this week. I'm not sure if the 2 of you have been secretly and clandestinely collaborating on your naming, but which is unlikely since you live in different countries, but the name, the Tassus Dolphins, is making a run for it, or should I say, swimming upstream. So thank you both for those suggestions. And with that, we're going to close our time together. I hope you enjoy a brilliant sunny weekend. Some studies indicate that vitamin D actually helps prohibit getting infected from the virus. So please get outside and enjoy all you can while being safe. And we'll see you next week. And lastly, often questions that come to the admissions office and questions that are asked in these webinars are covered on our website, particularly in the blogs that are appearing. There's probably 25 headmasters and academic team blogs up now. So I would encourage you to take a look, and maybe they can answer in more detail some of the questions you have since we've run out of time again. So thanks, everyone. Thank you, Amy. Thank you, Gina. And thank you, Zoe. Time to get up, Zoe. All right. Good night, all.